Hello and welcome to Tech Chairs, the sports tech podcast. I'm Rebecca Hopkins, CEO of the STHQ.
And I'm Alex Dibble, a sports broadcaster who's worked with tech startups in sports and other sectors.
This season is all about finances and failure. We're speaking to sports tech entrepreneurs about the financial journeys they and their companies have been on, the highs, the lows, and the lessons. We hope these conversations are valuable in helping other entrepreneurs and anyone thinking of taking the plunge avoid dangerous pitfalls and set themselves up for commercial success.
This season of Tech Chairs is sponsored by Sports Tech HQ in Indiana. Sports Tech HQ, the home of sports, is building the largest cluster of sports technology companies in North America. In this industry, proximity matters. You want to be where the teams, leagues, and decision makers actually are. Indiana is home to dozens of sports organizations that rely on technology to run smarter, move faster, and stay competitive. Don't get lost in the noise. Build where the sports industry actually lives. Learn more at sthq.org.
Our guest for this episode is Stephen Schweickart, the Chief Operating Officer of innovate. Stephen has pioneered the use of bioceramics in clothing, which enables far infrared particles emitted by the human body to be reflected back. This enhances biological and physiological functions. He's putting this technology to use in many areas, including, crucially, sport. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us here today. I mean, it's interesting, how do you go from a beach in, was it Puerto Rico? Just enjoying the sunshine and suddenly thinking, I want to create a sports tech startup. Talk us through that.
Oh, that is a loaded question. I sold a company back in 2018, and Puerto Rico has a lot of tax incentives for U.S. citizens. So I moved down there, and I was living there, and then met my now wife 7 or 8 years ago. And I still dabbled in small business, but after being there for a few years, I was brought an opportunity to put bioceramics, it's a formulation, if you will, into a suit company that I actually owned at the time. So we were looking into putting bioceramics into our suit liners to then cater to our NBA and NFL athletes to give them far infrared technology and benefits while they wore suits on game day after they worked out in the morning. That's kind of how it started. It was an idea to put it as an add-on feature in the suiting industry. And then I realized that the opportunity is way bigger than that. And that's when I decided to start working again and come out of semi-retirement and tackle it head on with some business partners.
And so you were sort of utilizing experience and knowledge that you already had and kind of applying it in a sports tech sort of environment, weren't you? And therefore, did you feel more confident going into sports tech as an entrepreneur because you weren't starting something totally alien to you, but were actually transferring something, if you will?
I think for any entrepreneur, you could give me t-shirts to sell. I could sell popcorn on the street. It doesn't matter. It's going to to me, it's fun. And so I like a challenge. And I will say that when this was first brought to me, I did not understand what far infrared was. I didn't know how it related to near infrared. I had no idea what the benefits were physiologically. I was completely outside of my league. And so coming into this, I had to become a quasi crash course, expert enough to explain it to people on the phone to start conveying whether or not, hey, does this motivate you to buy more suits? And that's kind of how I got into it.
It's interesting that you say that, one of the strongest skills in your arsenal is that ability to sell. And somebody once said to me that, some of the easiest people to sell to are salespeople because they're naturally positive. They absolutely buy into ideas that excite them. How do you then temper that enthusiasm and that determination to I will get this across the line with actually the occasional reality check and think, hang on, there may be a flip side to this that isn't so positive and actually impose some business metrics or some, almost be play devil's advocate to the overriding positivity that is inherent to salespeople.
That is an interesting and first time I've ever been asked that question, Rebecca. So, that's a good one. Um, I am inherently positive when it comes to all things business. Even when it's doomsday, I'm like, there's a, silver lining. The glass is half full. My business partners, I have two business partners. One is the opposite of me, and he's the CEO of the company currently, and he's always just planning for the worst, and whenever I'm happy, he's talking about the worst things that could happen. And if he ran just his own ship, I'm sure that, we'd probably have one trajectory. And if I ran my own ship, we'd have a different trajectory altogether. And I don't think either is good on their own. I think that you have to have that balance. And our third business partner, ironically, is the pragmatic one between both of us, and it's like a three-legged stool. You have to have in business, especially when failure is like in this space. I mean, we thought we were going to be up and running within like a year. We're now in the third year, and now we have big contracts coming through. And it took a lot of patience and grit to fight through that in order to not have that quick win and success. Because my last company was software, and I could go and I could create a platform in 3 or 4 months, and then I put it online, I market it, and I have people signing up. Right. And you see money coming in, and it's a completely different feeling. In sports tech, hard tech specifically, which is what we're in, the brands that we sell to, which are the big brands, the big ones plan 2 to 3 years in advance of whatever collection or line they're going to be launching. The small, nimble ones might be a year and a half in advance. You're not going to be like launching something and selling it within a year. It just doesn't happen like it does in tech. So that was something that I don't think we were necessarily thinking about or prepared for with our backgrounds. And so, in order for us to fight through that, I do think that you have to have someone like me that just, you never give up. And I think that if you don't have that optimism, you are setting yourself up for failure. But at the same time, to your point, you also need the guy that reins me in, right? Because it's not all sunshine and rainbows and unicorns. It can be very tough. And if I was the only one planning and in charge of the budget and everything else, and we had no checks and balances, we would have ran out of money, frankly. I mean, because I would have not have planned for things going wrong. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question.
I'm interested. I've got two questions for you actually, relating to that valley of death that someone else described it to me, that gap between having a product and then industry being prepared to buy into it. Firstly, what financial backup plan did you have to get you through that valley of death? And secondly, what was it like emotionally going through it at the same time?
So it's an interesting question because I have learned from experience that if you have a backup plan, you tend to not plan for the worst, and you tend to be overly optimistic and not do things correctly. And I learned this from my suiting industry business, where my business partner was the artist, if you will, and the creative guy. And then I was the business guy. We played baseball together in college. And one thing I learned from that experience is after going into it, and he's done very well. I have exited that business, um, but it took way longer to get somewhere than it should have because I just kept subsidizing the shortfall. Every month I would write a check to cover the difference between sales and whatever operations might be. And I did that for years, and I put millions into it as a result. And if I had done it differently, where I wasn't a backup option or just funded it all up front versus being a subsidy play, it would have gone completely differently. And I think that when you think that you have backup options, I do believe that you don't perform as if you have to get this done or you will fail. And I think that ultimately that hurts the business. And I think that the more you rely on backup options, and I think that my business partners they've gone through their own failures as well. And those are not something that we look at and say, you know what, we have this as a backup option. No, we're going to make this work, or it is going to crash and burn. The younger kids that are coming up and being entrepreneurs don't have that mindset. And a lot of times, whether they have wealthy parents or something else, They might think that they're going to be able to fail, especially with the millennial and every other generation that's been down. Like there's been a lot of different mindsets versus the people that had to tough it out and make it work versus getting, participation trophies. No offense to anybody that, grew up in that generation, but I do think it's a little bit of a different shift.
Yeah, no, completely. And in terms of that, would you say that that's kind of the single biggest lesson or the single biggest pass on that you'd have? Because it is so crucial, because you're absolutely right. Yeah, if there's sort of 10 grand in the bank and the company needs 10 grand, well, guess what? That's where it goes. Um, is that almost the single biggest mistake you see entrepreneurs making repeatedly? Because of course, you can go on feeding the machine for a very long time on that basis. Or are there other more fundamental things that you think, well, propping your own business up, fair enough, but this is something I see as being a bigger issue.
That's a good question. I would drill it down to two things. I would say optimism, over optimism, right? Is one of the biggest challenges and points of failure for an entrepreneur. I also, plays the role of investor as well. So when people would send me, presentations and decks and whatever it might be, I kind of go to the projections first to see how crazy you are. I kind of, I'll pay more attention and I'll respect you more if I think you're going to lose a lot of money in the first year. And if you show me that you're going to be making money by the end of the first year, chances are that everything else in your deck is not valid, right? Because nobody really becomes profitable in their first year. Um, that's one. And then the other one I would say is lack of planning. Market strategy, I think matters as much as how much money you have in the bank. I don't think that one is more important than the other, frankly, because you can have no money in the bank and have a great go-to-market strategy and still start a business and be successful through just whether it's creative deal making or whatever you might do. Like I remember when I first started my initial business, I was buying homes on land contract and I was putting kids in them and financing them as a result after getting deals done to take over the homes. And this was in college. And I was housing college kids as a result, but wasn't actually buying them. Like I didn't have the money to buy the homes. I was just getting creative on financing deals and arbitrage, and that's how I got the business going. And so I don't, and that's an example of a go-to-market strategy, right? No money, go-to-market strategy. And on the flip side, you can have money and no go-to-market strategy, and the chances of you actually succeeding, I mean, you'd have to be really good at what you're doing or lucky. You still need a go-to-market strategy, right? So I do think that those are the two things, optimism and having a go-to-market strategy and actually knowing what you're doing with your plan are probably the two most important things to deviate from failure.
And having moved into the sports sector, yep, being a college athlete is obviously equipping you well for something like that. But has there, aside from the sales cycle, that which is so long, it really can be such a long time between pitching and doing the contract. Is there anything else about moving into that B2B side of sport that has surprised you, or any words of advice you'd be giving to people looking to move into a sector? Because it's so sexy and attractive and aspirational. Sometimes when you look under the bonnet, there are a few surprises in there.
Also, a very good question. So the two things that come to mind, one is even though our product it's essentially a formulation of different rocks. I mean, it is a fancy rock that emits far infrared radiation. It's a mirror. It radiates far infrared light, which you can't see with your eyes. But when you're getting paid tens of millions of dollars to perform, and I'm trying to get you to work with us as a sponsor or an athlete ambassador, I never expected, I think, how much these are scrutinized. Every single athlete at the professional level is a business, right? So every single thing that they put on their body, they want to know exactly what that's going to do to them. And I don't think I anticipated how much that would come up. And then we've been able to navigate through it, but it's also something that's interesting and rightfully so. I mean, if you're making tens of millions of dollars and you're a professional athlete, you want to make sure that you're not doing something that's going to eventually like be bad for you. And ours is not. But that's something that obviously came up that I don't think I was ready to answer those questions. Um, And it's worked out well because it's also proven a lot of trust, and people really understand it better because it forces you to work through like what all the benefits are and then navigate that. And it's also helped me from a sales perspective. That's something I probably wasn't prepared for when we started out, and now we just easily go through that conversation like nothing. Um, the other aspect that I think that was interesting that I wasn't prepared for in the sports tech space is the amount of R&D and studies and research that you'll need to validate X, Y, and Z when it comes to a hard tech. So we had studies done through affiliate large universities across the country before we got involved in the technology. But if you go to Nike and you try to sell to a Nike, they say, that's great, that school, I've heard of it before. I've heard of that school before, but we're an Oregon school. So you need to come to the University of Oregon and do a study with us there all over again. So what we look at is we say, hey, what do we need to do that will give us a slam dunk no matter who we're talking to and what school they're affiliated with? We need to go to the best. Let's go to Harvard. Let's just get that stamp of approval and they're from their School of Medicine. And that's really the strategy that we have taken. And that's something that I don't think I was anticipating as much up front, where if you're going to go into the sports tech space, the hard tech space, things that surround your body and give you benefit, you need to have the data from credible institutions to back that up. Otherwise, you're going to be continuously doing studies for every single brand you pitch to, and it just becomes more expensive that way.
I wanted to pick up on that research element that you spoke about. In terms of costs that you may have to shell out that you're not anticipating for, you're not budgeting for at the outset, what's your advice in terms of how much to have in reserve for those miscellaneous costs? I mean, when you build a house, they say always think it's going to cost 150% or 200% of what you think. What's your advice about how much to have in reserve for costs that you just cannot ever anticipate?
Good question. So whenever someone starts a business like this, like myself, when I got into it, I wasn't thinking about budgeting for studies. I mean, our seed round that we're in the middle of closing right now, I mean, probably about 20% of it is going to go to validating everything that we already know. And also the other part about it is when you're going to market, knowing how long that burn is going to be. And whatever you think it's going to be, you need to have more in your tank than you think. But I'm telling you, it's a tricky industry, especially when you're dealing with professional athletes as well. There's just so many different variables that go into it. I wish I had a little bit more of a sniper rifle on that one and could give you one specific answer, but I think it's a smattering of things.
So you say that you're going for seed funding at the moment, and that financial growth journey in terms of how you get funding to grow. I mean, you've obviously developed quite a few businesses, you invest in others. Are there typical mistakes or are there pieces of advice you'd give people as to when to get growth? What are the fundamental principles founders should be thinking of? This is the point I need to get money, and it's not to stay afloat, it's to grow. Who should I go to? How should I do it? Are there some basics? Are there some purported myths in the sector where people, because I mean, I remember 5 years ago, I sat on so many startup judging panels, and most people would throw in the line, "When I exit in 5 years." And it's like, well, don't you think you're going to enjoy your business enough to want to do it a bit longer? Um, that kind of desire to get in funding or to exit, where do people tend to either go wrong or make mistakes, or how should they be thinking about that whole bringing third party money and investment in?
It's all about not diluting early. And I think that that's the number one thing. I think that in my when I did my last company in the tech world, I tried to like I wanted to own everything. Okay, and I should have brought on capital because I could have made the company worth 10 times what I sold it for. And the reason I didn't is I wanted to maintain a 75% ownership stake, which was a huge mistake, right? And if I knew then, as a 20 and early 30s entrepreneur, like how to properly stage funding, I think that that would have helped me tremendously. So I think you always need to look at, I would recommend everybody research this and go into it and understand like what does the funding landscape look like and what are the different stages of funding. So for example, going in and getting friends and family first and foremost, or your own capital, and starting there and making the valuation as high as possible. I mean, one thing that I've found that any reasonable company, whether it's tech or sports tech, if you've got a good team, a good scope, you can justify a $10 million valuation if you've got a good path, go to market, and you know you're going to be successful because you've done it before, right? That's a pretty common theme that I've seen. So, not that you can do that as a kid out of your garage, right? But at the same time, when you're doing the startup world, legit startup world, you can use that as a basis and research with that. I mean, ChatGPT can tell you a lot about that I didn't even know when I was, starting my businesses. So, you go out and you raise more, a little bit more than you need, because whatever you think you need, you're going to need a little bit more. And then you raise that valuation. You build it up to commercialization, you get some contracts in the door, and then you go maybe do your pre-seed, which might be another chunk, right? But you're raising at a higher valuation. And then you build up from there, and then you need to go to your seed, which is now you're getting validated. And now you're like, okay, you know what? We do have commercial traction. We are out there selling our product. And then if you raise properly at the seed level, you may or may not have to do a Series A. I mean, again, I'm going big business. I'm not, talking about a lot of entrepreneurs don't go this route. And I wish I would have on my last one because I would have done it way more successfully than I did. And I was still successful, but I could have made it way more powerful. And then when you go to that point and then you get to validation, commercialization, and you've got good cash flow and you're profitable, then go to your Series A, right? And if you stage, like I always thought about if I bring on investment right now, I'm going to have to dilute and I'm going to lose control. That's not the right mentality. The right mentality is use that as a tool to have a more success in the future and only bring on in certain stages and understand friends and family, pre-seed, seed, series A, understand what those benchmarks are to get there and why you only do certain things at certain points to make sure that you're not further diluting yourself unnecessarily. And ultimately, at the end of the day, all that matters if your goal is to exit in the future, or just grow it as big as possible and make as much cash flow as possible. Ultimately, you need to know where you're going and where your goal is in order for you to properly raise. Because if your goal is to do a small lifestyle related business that's going to make, let's say, four or $500,000 a year, and you don't have any ambition of growing it, and you've got a big moat around you that keeps competition from coming in, and you're not afraid of somebody coming out with a widget the next day and you're going out of business, that's a completely different path to funding and what you need to raise and what you need to do than if your goal is to make an exit in the future or anything in between. And I think that if you don't know where you're going, well, one, you're never going to get there. And you're going to fail, and you're going to be way more likely to fail in the beginning because you're going to get lost and you're going to burn through capital and then you're going to be done. If you know where your goal is and you have a strategic go-to-market strategy to get there, and going back to Rebecca, to the other question you asked, like that's one of the top two reasons that people fail, I think, is they don't have a really well vetted plan on how they're going to get there. You also don't know how to go about raising money, and then you either are afraid of it, it's too complex for you, or you're afraid of giving up control and you're scared, and then ultimately you end up selling or making an exit or doing something that could have been way more successful if you had been more tactical in the beginning.
With you say that you didn't want to relinquish more than 75%. There are some of these standard numbers that are bounced around the industry, like, oh, keep 75%, never have less than 51%. There are all these things. How many of those are actually valuable, and how many of those are just sort of put out by people who just have sort of drunk the Kool-Aid on entrepreneurship 101?
It's a very good, also a very good question because that also depends on your ultimate goals. Like, so in my last business, I was young. I wanted to be the boss. I wanted to be the CEO. I wanted to be in control. And my selfishness, I think, ultimately penalized me, right? In the venture that I'm in now, I mean, I'm very much a minority owner, right? And as part of that, I don't care because we're trying to create a unicorn here and we have very talented people. I mean, I am not the most talented person on our team, and we have incredibly talented people that will get us there, hopefully. So I would much rather have a fraction of a unicorn in the future, hopefully, than have 75% of a company that's worth, a fraction of that. And it's just about math ultimately. I think that that really is the number one thing is if you know where you're going and what your goals are, you'll be much more successful in how you want to go about it, whether it's 75, 51, 25%, whatever that percentage point might be. I think where you want to go is what dictates that percentage point.
My question was related to that, and it's
And oh, one more thing. I'm
oh
going to
yeah,
say,
sorry, go on.
so really one more thing. So also the other thing that I was not smart enough to realize in my last venture was really it's not just about percentage of ownership. I mean, you can have corporate governance that gives you what you want as if you were a 51% owner, right? And a majority controlling owner in your voting rights in corporate governance stocks outside of your percentage ownership. So a lot of people also miss that. They think that it's just a percentage number. It's not. It's also how is your organization set up from a voting perspective, from who has the final say in X, Y, and Z. And you can have a lower percentage and accomplish that elsewhere. They aren't necessarily mutually exclusive.
Hmm. So my question was related to that element of control, but also those stages of fundraising that you were talking about earlier. When you look back at your journey through those, how many other people do you think, without their advice from a financial perspective, I would have tanked? How many other people were essential?
I don't think I would ever be able to do what I'm doing now without my team at all, at any level. Um, I look at like all the businesses I ran before this, I learned the majority of what I had in my brain from going after school, soccer practice, whatever it might be, and sitting with my dad who owned a small business, sitting on his office floor, just listening to him do phone calls and meetings while I did my homework, and just learn through osmosis of what this looks like. Had I not had that, I wouldn't have even known where to start or wouldn't have even had the bug probably to even go there. I mean, I remember I almost after 9/11 happened, I almost joined the military, that was like a very pivotal point in my trajectory where I would have gone into the military or ended up going to be an entrepreneur. And had I not had that influence from my father, just growing up, I probably would not have picked entrepreneurship. And I do believe that mentorship is vital for any entrepreneur to succeed. Even in my last business, I had two or three very strong mentors that guided me. And I think that any kid that thinks that they know it all and they can do it all on their own without any kind of leadership or mentorship is 99%, probable to fail. And I think that anybody that is humble and can seek advice and counsel from people that have done it before and have been there and not think you know more than them. And that's every kid thinks that they're going to succeed and they're going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg or whatever they might think they're going to be. They don't realize that that is a complete anomaly. And even the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, I'm sure, had their mentors, right? And I think pride is another thing that probably causes a lot of younger people to fail because they don't realize that they need help and seeking guidance and listening to counsel from wisdom and older people that have been through it themselves, I think is 80% of the journey of getting there. If you don't do that, and you don't listen to people's failures and stories, and you think you're going to be able to know better than them, I think you're going to fail, frankly.
As we sort of wrap up, then maybe this could be the final question or maybe the penultimate question. From a financial perspective, what is the most terrified you've been in sports tech?
Oh goodness. I mean, that's a that I could answer that a thousand different directions. In the sports tech space, I think the most terrified I was we literally had things happen they always seem to happen right at the last second or right at the right time to make sure we went from first base to second base to third base and we didn't get tagged out along the way. We've been to places where we didn't even know if we were going to be able to make payroll or survive, And those are very difficult times to go through. I mean, there were times when, we weren't paying ourselves for a period of time until we were able to get the next wave of investment, right? And you need to be able to know that that's going to happen and plan accordingly. And your personal life and your personal expenses are intertwined with your business expenses. And so what you don't want to do is, and this is probably the best way to answer your question in a very indirect way, and how to avoid being terrified, is keep your personal world in a as stripped down as a version as possible until you succeed in the business world. Because if you have too much overhead personally, it's going to impact your business. It's going to cloud your judgment, and you're going to do dumb things at the business level when it comes to finances. You'll end up being desperate in your sales process. You'll send out emails and marketing material that people can smell the desperation and why are you doing this? And then I was going to buy from you before, now I'm not going to. Like, you need to get both your personal and your business house in order. Otherwise, you will run into those very, very desperate times that you're referring to in the financial side.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's very sage. And just one more question from me, because I can't resist the opportunity. What can I say? Um, in a market like the States, and with what you do, we see so many great young businesses who are very ambitious and have done everything right. And we just see that they're going to try and boil the ocean because you say, well, what do you do? And they're in every sport and they want to be in every territory. And how do you, or what's your recommendation for staying focused and you really prioritizing where you're going to get most returns and keeping that good sense head on so that you may not explode and be this fabulous overnight success. You really build sensible. I mean, sensible is one of the most unsexy words, but so vital. um how do you mentor people to kind of stay sensible and grow naturally rather than kind of come in with a bang and risk going out with a fizz?
So there are 20 different ways to answer that question. And I'm not immune to it myself. I mean, it really is something that I've also had to struggle with, and even with our product now. The benefits of our product actually are just as much in agriculture as they are in humans, as they are in pets. I mean, our product could go into paint and you radiate heat, it collects it, turns it back, and sends it back to you as far infrared light. It can go in a lot of different things, but really focusing on what is going to cover our burn the fastest, validate our product, and get us to a credible point of we are now cash flowing is the path to take for any business, because cash is king, and knowing that you have enough to cover your burn and that you're not going to eat into your investment pool, and you have to make those dollars last as long as possible. So to answer your question, I don't think that it's a matter of how much can your product do, because we struggle with this because our product can do so much in so many different use cases. Um, and I think that that's a great example. It's a matter of looking at it financially and saying, what do I need to do and focus on in one area, maybe two, that will get me to profitability the fastest way possible. And that's, you have to be laser focused on that, and that's what we are doing right now. And then that also ties into the fundraising element. In order for you to then grow into, let's say, these other use cases that you might be able to utilize with your product, you need to be able to get there first, right? And if you diffuse your energy in 20 different directions, again, you're going to be not great at any of them. You're going to be okay or good at all of them, but that's not going to set you up to go to get your, seed and then your Series A. So make sure that you cover your bases and become profitable and healthy before you expand your reach, which I would then use investment dollars, and those investors know that's what you're going to be using those investment dollars for, to then scale and grow outside because you've been able to cover your burn and your basis initially with one product and focus.
I mean, Steve, we could have spoken to you for hours.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephen, there's so much wisdom in everything you said. I wonder if what you said a moment ago about your personal life and your business life is particularly pertinent right now. So many people, will have memories of conversations they had to have with their partner, with their fiance, their wife or their husband, at the start of a journey, and not quite sure how to marry, excuse the pun, those two elements of their life. So thank you for sharing your thoughts on that and indeed everything else.
No problem. I enjoyed it.
We hope you enjoyed that conversation with Stephen and that it's set you on the right path.
The STA Group exists to be the link between suits, tracksuits, lab coats and wallets. Thank you again to our sponsor, Sports Tech HQ, and thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Goodbye.